Do you know what human trafficking is?
I would assume that would have something to do with selling people.
Do you know the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling?
Well, I would assume human smuggling would be consensual to the person getting delivered.
All right. So today for this project, we're going to be going over an education project on what human trafficking is. So, there are three different types of human trafficking. There is sex trafficking, forced labor, child sex trafficking, and the national hotline is 888-373-7888. So, human trafficking is when you take somebody against their will and you take away their freedoms and you either force them into a servitude role or sex favor role. So, sex trafficking is what it sounds like. It's when they traffic women for a sex trade. Forced labor is for forced servitude or forced labor or slave labor. And child sex trafficking is when they traffic children for sex. So, trafficking involves three elements: force, fraud, and coercion. So, force, fraud, and coercion. So, force is when they force them, and then fraud is when they use some kind of advertisement to lure victims. And then coercion is when they use some type of like abuse or threat of abuse to force someone into human trafficking. So, human trafficking is the trade of humans for purposes such as labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation for the traffickers or others. Usually it's for monetary gain. Where this differs from human smuggling is that smuggling cases are usually when someone pays somebody else to have them smuggled across the border. And so they are free to leave after the transaction is over. When it becomes human trafficking is when when the smuggler turns around and says, "Okay, you need to pay off your debt for me smuggling you across, so you're not free to leave. You need to do work for me." In 2020, 50% of human trafficking victims identified in federal cases were young girls, children under the age of 18. So a lot of these like sexual human trafficking cases, a majority of them are under 18. And the reason why is because most traffickers want young girls because they are free of diseases. They usually don't have any kind of sexual diseases. And most young girls know they're traffickers. They don't realize that they are being groomed and that they're being groomed to be trafficked. Usually these people can be family members, they can be social media stalkers, and they can be pretend boyfriends called Romeos. And so these Romeo boyfriends will lure them by, filling their head full of ideas with love. And that's why it's important to protect yourself online. So, to conclude this education project, now you know the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling. And now you know that it is important to protect yourself from people online and protect